My friends are getting married, so they asked me to make a big A as a prop for the wedding, where everybody can write messages for them, and that will later become sort of a bookshelf for their home. I got this big print as a real scale reference to make the initial layout easier. First thing was to extend the horizontal lines on the print. This way I can see clearly where to mark the pine boards to cut or glue on those specific angles. Then I transfer all the points to the top surface and connect them. The other leg of the A needs to be symmetrical, so I transpose all the distances with a caliper. Before setting up the miter saw, I wanted to know what that angle was, so I grabbed the digital angle finder, and that turned out to be 13 degrees. So I set up the saw to 13 and made the top cuts on both pieces. For the bottom cuts, I grabbed the angle finder again, but it was obvious that the angle was the same as before, simply on the other way around. 77 is 90 degrees minus 13. The angle that connects the two legs of the A is again 13 degrees, but there was no way of making it on the miter saw, so I clamped a straight edge and made the cut on both legs with a circular saw. I laid down both legs and made some marks to cut the horizontal piece. It's time to join the boards and turn this into one single piece, and for that I will be using a doweling jig from Rockler. It was my first time using a doweling jig, and I found this one really easy to use with great results. So you have 3 lines, and the one in the middle needs to be aligned perfectly with the mark you do in the board. The other 2 lines represent the center of the holes you are going to drill. I just clamped the jig really well to the workpiece and set up the depth stop in place in the drill bit. To get the right depth, I placed the drill bit inside the jig, touching the wood, and attached the stop ring just a tiny bit over half of the dowel length. Then I just drilled up those holes, backing the drill a few times to release the sawdust. Since I drew lines on both pieces, it's just a matter of aligning the center line of the jig with the ones in the boards, and everything works perfectly in the end. I inserted all the dowels and glue in the holes that will connect the horizontal piece and assembled it. I took some scraps from the angles that I cut before, so this way I can use clamps to squeeze those parts together nicely. Kept everything flat using some hold-down T-track clamps, but you could also use some heavy stuff on top. While the glue is drying, I will keep filling the holes with dowels and get over the disc sander to sharpen a few of them. Clean up any squeeze out and remove the clamps from the glue up. I will be connecting the other leg, and these are the sharpened dowels. These joints are not in the same alignment, which means it is nearly impossible to get the dowels entered in the holes. And by reducing the diameter of the dowels on one part, it forces them to get into the hole while adjusting to the available space. I got the clamping started on both parts and took my time spreading glue on the dowels and edges. This way I didn't go mad stressing out to clamp everything at the same time the glue is already setting. I gave a few turns on the clamps, alternating to have full control of the clamping, and it went pretty smooth. About an hour later, I removed the clamps and started working on the sides to make it volumetric. First, I needed to make a rabbet along all sides to create a place for them to rest on the backer piece I just created. I used a 3/4 inch straight bit and used a scrap piece to set up the size of the rabbet to match the 80mm pine boards that I am using. To start shaping the volume of the letter, I set the saw to a 13-degree bevel and made a cut on 3 of the boards, taking orientation into consideration because now I have a rabbet, so each angle cannot be cut randomly. From now on, I will be measuring everything on a relative dimensioning mode. This means I take the board to the place where it is going to be and make pencil marks. I also used small scrap pieces from the project to make it easier to measure sometimes, and I always trace the orientation of the angle so I don't mess it up when I get to the miter saw. There are a few pieces that need, let's say, the rabbet to be continued on one of the edges so that the piece can sit forward into the A and align the inside corners with the center horizontal pieces. If this makes any sense, I think you'll get it later. All the pieces are cut to size except the middle ones, so I will start building the volume. Here I think you can understand what I was talking about earlier.
Shit.
Whoops, I put the glue on the wrong side. I finished up assembling the contour of the A, and towards the end the nail gun went out of nails, and I just realized that after a few shots. So I just grabbed a small magnet and started placing it near the nail holes to find which ones didn't have nails inside, because sometimes you can't really tell by the look, since the gun still makes a tiny hole in the wood whether a nail was shut or not. Some edges needed a few strokes with a hand plane, and I decided to fill up the gaps left by the rabbets. To make the center walls, I needed to make very wide-angled bevels, and the only way I could find was with a table saw. I built a quick jig because the boards needed to be placed vertically, and I did want to make the cuts as safe as possible. So first I made a cover for the fence that will slide with a wood piece clamped on it, and let the blade cut the angle. By this time, I was starting to get really nervous, so I didn't film every single step, but I think you get it just right. The angle here is once again 13 degrees, but in this case, I need to split it in two, so that both walls connected make the 13-degree angle that I need for the center top corner of the A. At this point, I didn't realize that yet, so I made the cuts at 13 degrees, when in the end they needed to be 6.5 degrees, just like this MDF test. Here are the walls with the 6.5 angle cuts. It was really tricky to climb such a sharp corner, and I was lucky enough to get a pair of extra hands to help me out securing the angle scraps and to calm me down.
Almost.
On the next day, I shaped the angle and sanded everything smooth to make it ready for finish. I almost forgot about the poor plants that were about to get finished too. Ready and packed. Here is the final object and people writing nice messages for the newlyweds. When this gets to their home, I'm going to apply some shelves and turn this into something more functional that still has a lot of meaning to them and remains as a souvenir from the wedding day. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and a big thanks to Rockler for sponsoring this video. I'll catch you later.